Hello, and welcome to episode number 215 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week with Bryce Minds and all of the gaming industry. With me, I have Adam Candee. You can find his work over at LegalSportsReport.com and find him over on the Twitter machine. Absolutely free, Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y. If you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Guys, everything we do, absolutely free, so please subscribe, rate, review, do all of those awesome things. Hit the pause button. It'll take you 2 seconds. Hey, welcome back. All right, there we go. All right, perfect. This is going to talk about a little bit about some golf stuff going on, things in Arizona, things in Mississippi. But Adam, let's kick things off here over in Florida. Of course, the big story from our last podcast was the fact that Florida was going to be getting back in the swing of things over there.
So we started with that, right? That Florida was going to be doing in-person sports betting by December. And we asked the question, okay, well then when does online sports betting start again? Because we know that what we had previously, as in 2 years ago, was the Hard Rock Bet app, which was at the time Hard Rock Sportsbook, available throughout the state of Florida, but only for a few weeks before a federal court case ultimately caused that to be taken down. Now, the federal court case has generally played out in the favor of the Seminole Tribe and of Hard Rock Digital, and so they felt comfortable relaunching, even though there is a state case that is now pending challenging the legality of Hard Rock Bet on different grounds than it was being challenged in the federal case. So, what did we see? As of Tuesday morning, Hard Rock Bet went live again in Florida. So the app became available for people who had previously registered, for who had previously bet with Hard Rock Bet. You would be able to turn your app back on again and be able to wager legally anywhere within the state of Florida. Now, the trick to that is,
but not you, Calvin Ridley. Not you, Calvin Ridley. Don't not you, Calvin Ridley. You don't do
no.
Like, yes,
even,
yeah.
It's a little. even though Jameson Williams is back on the field, like it's a different story.
Not you, Jameson. Calvin, you guys, not you, but everyone else. Yes, everyone else.
No, sorry, boys. But the Florida situation is such that if you want to wager with Hard Rock Bet, but you didn't have the app previously and you hadn't placed a wager previously, well, they have it set up now to where you have to go to a Hard Rock casino in Florida. You have to sign up for the loyalty program. You have to play at least enough to earn 1 point in the loyalty system, and then you'll be placed on a wait list. And what we've heard is that the wait list is not that long, that they're just kind of verifying folks and getting them processed. But the point of the matter is that's different than what it was initially, right? We did not initially have people having to go and register in person. But that's not really the story here, because the story is just about as soon as Hard Rock Bet relaunched, here came Wes Flagler Associates, once again challenging this in court, this time at the state level, asking essentially for an emergency stop to sports betting in Florida because they say that the in-person launch was essentially a distraction to be able to go ahead and do what was their ultimate goal, which is to relaunch the Florida sports betting product online while it is still legally questionable. They, of course, Wes Flagler argues now at the state level that Florida sports betting was not authorized to the way that it was supposed to be authorized, which is to go to the ballot and have voters vote on it, as opposed to have it be negotiated through the compact between the Seminole Tribe and Governor Ron DeSantis. Look, you could spend plenty of time over at LegalSportsReport.com reading the work that we've done, talking about the legal challenges at the federal level, the legal challenges at the state level. The story as it is right now is that, once again, for the second time, the Hard Rock Bet app is live in Florida. There is a way for people to wager legally in Florida as of right now. How long that will last, we don't necessarily know, because we once again have a live challenge, this time, as we mentioned, at the state level. But for now, there is a legal way to bet online in Florida.
Yeah, the in-person angle we know all too well, Adam, of the having to register and do all of that online. We know how that works because that is still the Nevada archaic way of doing things. And, listen, over there in Florida, for all of the guys that were previously betting and all that, I do wonder, and, maybe we'll get some stats on this, Adam, down the line, and maybe not, because maybe this gets shut down again. But I do wonder what the reactivation process is for someone who's had a dormant account for 2 years, right? Like, what is the reactivation percentage of people who go, oh, all right, it's only been 2 years, but let me hop right back into this or whatever. It's going to be, I'm sure they strategized about this a ton and tried to figure out what they thought was optimal, but we know how hard it is to acquire a customer in the first place. And when you gave them a taste and then you took it away for 2 years, I wonder how many people are eager to kind of jump back in.
I'm sure there will be people who have had the app and hear that it's legal again and say, sure, I've still got some money in that account. I'll give it a shot. We know that also this is eventually plans for this to be a Hard Rock Bet app that is all inclusive, right? That's why it was changed from Hard Rock Sportsbook to Hard Rock Bet to eventually be able to offer online gaming as well. So I think the interesting part here is going to be, Matt, what you said, the idea that if you had the opportunity to be activated as an online sports betting customer, just period, an online sports betting customer, did you get that taste in Florida from Hard Rock Bet? And then did you go download Bovada? Did you go download Bet Online? Did you just say, oh, well, I'm just going to go do something else? Now that I know I can bet online in Florida, it's been made aware to me. Now I can go find some other product that, of course, is not actually legal, but is available. And so are they going to come back? Who knows? I still think that there will be plenty of people who never got in the first place within that very short window that it was available back 2 years ago. And there'll be plenty of people to be activated outside of that group. So we'll see in the long run. And again, we know that this challenge from West Flagler will probably be ruled on in the next few days as to whether or not it gets to stay live right now.
We're rooting for you out there, Florida people. We're hoping you get to stay in the legal market and not having to get pushed back to your online stuff offshore and or your local bookie down the street. So
good luck, Florida man and Florida woman.
Yeah. Yes, we're hoping here. All right, it's another week. It is another talk about these pick'em contests out there.
Yes, Matt. I had to actually check when I put this onto the podcast rundown to make sure that this wasn't one that we had already talked about, because that's been the velocity of the news when it comes to pick'em contests. This week, it's the state of Arizona and the state of Mississippi, both offering different levels of cease and desist, ban hammer, whatever you want to call it, on pick'em DFS products. Arizona put out a letter to the pick'em companies saying that this is against the law, and they were ordered to stop. In Mississippi, the guidance was a little softer than that, although interestingly, it did reference player versus house as part of the reasoning for why it is not allowable there. So the point of the matter is, the trend here is clear. The companies are going to continue to operate in those states. They have not pulled out of those states that I just listed a moment ago. But, you were the one who pointed out a couple of podcasts ago, Matt. I initially said, hey, that's X amount of states out of 50 that have said that this is not something that's allowed. And you very wisely said, well, it's actually, less than 50 because they weren't offering it in all 50 in the first place. And while the total addressable market might not be shrinking that much in terms of people quite yet, because California and Texas haven't done anything, it is shrinking in terms of the number of states, and it is shrinking in terms of the amount of regulators who have not taken an official stance to say that this is allowable. And that's still what we have not found. We still have not found any state regulator who's coming out here and saying, yes, we are 100% comfortable with the fact that this is a legal product that does not violate any regulations or laws in terms of its similarity to sports betting with the pick'em contests that have been popularized by Prize Picks, Underdog, Better, Sleeper, etc. So Arizona, Mississippi added to the list that already included 5 other states that have explicitly put that ban out there this year: in Michigan, in Florida, in New York, in Wyoming, and I did I say Michigan already? I'm losing track at this point. But yes, there are at least 7 that have made that move this year.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. We know that Underdog has had sports betting, their eyes on sports betting for quite a while. I wonder if this is basically a hey, we're going to speed this process up by a lot, at this point, because yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, sure, they are still operating in some states out there, but you tick off a state here, another 4 million people, you tick off another state here, another 3 million people, another 8 million there. Like it is cutting into the bottom line any way that you look at it. And so it does make me wonder if we see kind of an acceleration of Underdog's plans to try to get into the legal sports betting market.
It certainly could happen. We know that they had that plans. The problem for them and for anybody in this space right now is that the regulatory headwinds have grown so much on what they have done already that it's going to be a fairly wary eye that's going to be cast toward any of these companies and their viability, especially from the regulatory perspective and maybe even more so from the M&A perspective, that it's going to be very difficult for one of these companies to be acquired right now, even though they have built up a pretty impressive database that that would be beneficial to some sports betting operator down the line. Matt, I have a question for you related to this. Prize Picks held a world championship in Atlanta this past week. Okay, I'm going to read off a list of names to you. You ready? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, Drewski. Do you know Drewski?
Okay.
Meek Mill, Waka Flocka Flame, T Grizzly, Sean O'Malley, Overtime Megan, Steve Will Do It, Funny Marco, and Book It with Trent. Are you familiar with these people? Are these regular features of your life?
These, but the vast majority of the names I do definitely recognize. Yes.
What? Wow. Okay. I told the LSR crew I was familiar with Meek and Waka just from their musical stylings. And then Drewski has made a big enough name for himself to be out there in a number of commercials. And the rest, yeah. I thought to myself, I'm not sure I felt older than I do in this moment of not knowing these folks who probably fall under the influencer category.
Yes, Sean O'Malley, MMA fighter. So no.
Okay, there you go. No influencing.
Yes, sure, yeah. Yes, things like that. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. There's listen, I keep seeing commercials, not cheap commercials, because they're airing in pretty prime slots and pretty prime spots. Adam, I don't, again, I'm not putting words in Prize Picks' mouth or anything like that, but it does make me wonder if this is kind of all right, look, we might have a year left of this, like let's make as much money as we can make in the next year. And then if we get shut down, we get shut down, but we can make enough money to live the rest of our lives in the next year. So let's just do what we can do.
It's not the first time someone has said that to me.
You're like, oh, we'll just say that. We'll just we'll just leave it at that. All right, Adam. Let's talk here a little bit about some golf stuff. We know all of the major sports have put in some sort of gambling laws into theirs. Of course, we joked a little bit earlier when I was saying that when Florida got turned back on, that was for everybody except you out there, Calvin Ridley, who obviously in that two-year window when it was open for a brief moment did some stupid stuff and ended up getting himself suspended for a year from the NFL. It is, we think the major sports when we think about this, right? Like we think about football, and basketball, and hockey, and baseball and stuff. We don't really think about some of these other sports, but there's actually been gambling laws kind of involved in tennis and golf in there for a little bit of a hot minute for sure. And so here we find something getting laid down that made some decent headlines for the way that the PGA went about it.
Yeah, and Matt, I'm really torn on this story. This one is a challenge. I'm going to read out some of the details, and then I want you to talk about this a bit because you obviously know both the golf world and the golf betting world as well as anyone out there. So here are the details of this. We see a suspension come down from the PGA Tour for a player named Jake Stiano, and the important part to know is that he's on the Korn Ferry Tour, which has had a million different names. It is the feeder tour for the PGA Tour, and he was suspended for 3 months for betting on golf. Now, if you just read the headline like that, it reads in such a way that you say, sure, it's a golfer betting on golf. That is a major problem. There weren't a lot of details from the tour itself, but Stiano went on the Any Given Monday podcast, and he laid out essentially what he had done. And look, he said, quote, I understand the principle. I understand you can't bet on golf. They lay it out perfectly. You take this integrity program, so I didn't deny gambling. Here's where it gets tough for me. He made 4 total bets, totaling $116.20. And one of the bets was actually on a PGA Tour event. He made a bet on Bryson DeChambeau to make birdie on a certain hole at 2021. The other 3 bets that he made were on the match when DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka faced off in 2021. So actually on an exhibition golf betting match, Freudian slip, calling it a golf betting match, because this is a made-for-TV event that, if it weren't for betting, probably wouldn't exist in the first place. But that being said, it is a
and they were flashing odds
where,
on the screen the whole time that was going down, like whatever. Yeah, I mean they were giving you hole by hole. But yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's pretty clear that it's an event that is made for betting. And the reason I really struggle when it comes to golf is because these are independent contractors who are not members of a governing body, right? Like, there is no union among PGA Tour players. They are not necessarily members of the PGA Tour. I understand that they often might have inside knowledge, right? That's the part that makes it pretty tricky, where if they're betting on other golfers, they might know someone who knows someone. They might share a coach. They might share an agent. They might share an equipment rep. Like, all of these things could exist in which they might have some other form of information. So that part is pretty clear. This is the part that's really challenging for me, though. The 3-month suspension takes them out of Q school. And so it's not really a 3-month suspension, right? If you take a guy out of Q school, and if you don't know what we're talking about, Q school is essentially the tournament where guys have the opportunity to earn their card for next year to be able to play on the big tour. This is really a year-plus suspension because you keep the guy out of Q school. To me, that doesn't really seem in line with what he did, right? And maybe it's just the timing of it all. Maybe they could have allowed him to do Q school and then say, fine, you're going to be suspended for the first 3 months after you get your card, and at least give him an opportunity to play down the line on the tour in 2024. But I don't know, man. That's kind of where I fall on this, but I'm really curious what you think about it.
Yeah, it's very tough because these individual sports it's really, really tough because, as you mentioned, it's not the same as it is in the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL. So it's the same deal. We've already been through this with the UFC, right? And it's basically the same setup it is in golf. All of these guys, yes, are members of, for in this particular case, the PGA. Same deal with the UFC. Like, they have a contract with the UFC, but again, they're not full-time employees. They don't have a union, like you just said. There's nobody making decisions or negotiating on their behalf and trying to figure out what's best for them and getting things laid out specifically, perfectly written out so you know exactly what you're dealing with, et cetera, right? I mean, and the reason we bring this up even from that standpoint is because we saw the NFLPA go to the NFL and get this stuff written out and explained a whole lot better, because after you and I jumped up and down and screamed into these microphones about the Jameson Williams situation, his suspension gets reduced by 2 games because the NFLPA, on behalf of their players, went in and said, hey, this was stupid. You guys got to fix this. We need everything laid out and spelled out perfectly. We need to blah, 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 blah. That doesn't happen for UFC fighters. It doesn't happen for PGA Tour players. It doesn't happen for any of that. And so you get weird stuff like this, right? Like you're saying, where exhibition match, is that even really betting? I mean, there's just so many different things in which you could nitpick, and if you don't have things expressly written out and where you know exactly what you can and can't do, then there's a whole lot of gray area, right? Now, individual sports in general, do I think that maybe there should just be a blanket ban that you can't do anything within your sport? Probably, mainly because, not that you'd ever do it, but, it's not like a team sport. Like, yes, these guys have guaranteed salaries, right? I mean, like there is no quarterback in the NFL that would risk his salary to throw a game. Or we've talked about this a million times. Like, the salaries have gotten so big in the major sports that nobody of consequence is ever going to be compromised because the juice is not worth the squeeze. It just doesn't happen. And so you get in these individual sports where contracts are not guaranteed and you can make money off of, losing and things and stuff like that, to where it just gets a little really, really murky with me. I would hope that something like this does at least have the PGA to come out with a very firm list of exactly the do's and don'ts and the exact length of penalties for if you do this, if you do this, if you do this twice, then bam, or what, and all this. But, sometimes we say this, that good can come out of the bad. We talked about this with the Bijan Robinson situation a couple of weeks ago with the NFL. Like, sometimes a bad thing can end up into a good situation. I hope that happens here for golfers.
Just as an aside about the Bijan Robinson situation, turns out the one we need to suspend is Arthur Smith. Right? It turns out it's the head coach who was really – in the span of like 2 weeks, we've gone from yelling about the injury report in the NFL to yelling about the coach who won't use his player in the first place. Like, maybe there's nothing nefarious. It's just that his coach is an idiot.
Yes.
No, but when
this is true.
To the golf point and to the point about Jake Stiano and betting – on the sport, I think where I'm landing on this is a Jameson Williams feeling that, yes, I understand that there has to be a penalty and that you cannot do this, and we need to make clear that you cannot do this, but I don't think this punishment fits the crime at all. I don't think keeping the guy from having an opportunity to play golf on the PGA Tour next year is commensurate with $116 of bets, 3 of which were on an exhibition match that is made for betting in the first place. And if we're really being honest with ourselves about what golf is and the origins of golf going back the longest of times, golf is a betting sport. It might be the original betting sport. It is the sport where when you go play with your friends, it often involves betting when you're just out there saying, yeah, we're going to play a buck a hole, right? We're going to play a Nassau, right? Yeah. We're just going to... hey, closest to the pin buys, is getting beer bought for him. Like, whatever it is something that is inherent in the sport in such a way that it requires the PGA Tour to have more transparency. And I get it. You probably are listening to this podcast thinking, these guys always yell about transparency. Yeah, because it's the best way to make the regulated market more open and accessible to people and to give them more confidence in the way things are being done and the way either penalties are being meted out or guys are being deterred from doing things that they shouldn't do.
And Adam, I understand this is an incredibly slippery slope as well, but I think you understanding the nuance of the betting market and being an actual bettor the way that you do, I think you will understand this maybe than some of the people out there who are going to say, oh, you're just trying to be an apologist for some of these guys or whatever. But I honestly think how much is getting wagered should play into these decisions as well. And I know I understand it's a slippery slope and whatever, but like, ain't nobody getting rich off a $25 bet, and nobody's like throwing anything, or you're not compromising the integrity of anything, and all there's off of a $25 bet, off a $50 bet, hell man, off of a $1,000 bet. I mean, it's just the case that it is. Like I know slippery slope, and it's all kinds of craziness when it comes to all that, but at the end of the day, if the reason we're doing this is from an integrity standpoint, which is why we're doing it, again, like that has to factor in, because $50 is not compromising the integrity of anything. Like $100 is not compromising the integrity of anything. And wrong is wrong, and there should be some sort of penalty. I'm not saying that you will get to walk scot-free, but I do think at least needs to be taken into consideration that you were not, that it is quite obvious, right, that you were not doing anything that was going to compromise the integrity of whatever event it was that was going on.
So it brings to mind a story that my mom always tells me from when she was growing up, how my grandfather basically said to her, when it came to smoking, drinking, like whatever the vice was, he said, if you're going to try this, you're going to try this in my house. You're going to try it with me right here, right? Like when, if you're thinking about going out and doing this with your friends or in a place that you shouldn't be, no, you want to try a cigarette? Okay, well, when you're of the appropriate age, you try it right here, right? And the idea to me in that is that when you talk about the transparency that could be involved here, let's just say, I'm going to throw a number out, $25, $50, $100. Let's say the PGA Tour put in a policy to say you can place legal wagers at a regulated sports book up to X amount. Any sport, whatever the sport might be. And we made it clear. You could actually, if you were the type of person who really wanted to be an apologist, you could make a case that this would build engagement. You could make a case that people would be more interested in watching in a tournament if they knew that, someone, a playing partner of someone was saying, oh, yeah, I bet you $25 you can't make that one, right? Like it would almost be a way to engage. I get it. The slope is probably way too slippery for that to ever happen, and the nuance is probably too difficult for the tour to want to parse out, because a lot of stories might just say this guy bet on golf, not this guy bet $20 on golf. But I think you and I are making the point here to say that if the idea is going to be recreational betting, then that's a lot different than why we don't want people to be able to bet on their own sport, which is that they might use inside information. They might influence a wager. And I guess that's the hard part here as I talk this through, is that if you did allow recreational wagering, you say you allow $25 bets on someone, well, that's not the only money being wagered on that person, right? Like someone might have a far more serious wager on that person, and maybe, a friend of a friend would just think they were screwing around to miss a putt to, mess with somebody's bet. So I don't know, man. I just feel like as we talk through all of this, we don't think we have solutions necessarily, but we do feel like that there are better ways than what happened here.
Yeah, I just there's a way to get it. There's a way to get it done, and like you said, I mean, I understand that we're far away from this, but if you're the PGA and you have an official sports betting partner, and everyone is allowed to bet with that official sports betting partner, and your account is officially monitored by this official sports betting partner, and by the way, they can put limits on accounts just like they do with anybody else out there. And it's like, hey, the account's limited to $100 bets. You cannot bet anything more than $100 on anything within the account and all that. I mean, again, we're just talking through this on the fly here, but there are ways that this can be done that doesn't compromise the integrity whatsoever. Specifically, because when you're talking about golf, Adam, like you're talking about like you get paid like when someone succeeds, right? Like, I mean, that's how you that's how you get paid, right? And like, you're going to say, well, what about a head to head? It's $100 head to head. Like, no golfer is throwing, no golfer is not making a putt because someone's got $100 on it. Like that's not how it works, right? And if you know how head to heads work, then yeah, you can't make money off of $100 head to head. It's just there are ways that this could be done and handled a little bit better, but certainly in this scenario, I'm with you. I hope a Jameson Williams situation does happen here, where they go back and look at this and say, is this really worth kind of like making this guy sit on the sidelines for over a year, especially when we consider, one, it's the minor leagues anyway, so not making very much money to begin with, and then you're basically taking away for that person to put food on the table for an entire year. So hopefully we can get some cooler heads to prevail there on that one. Guys, as always, Apple, Spotify, Google, every single place that you go out and get your podcast, we are on there. So please hit the subscribe button. It is absolutely free with everything that we do. LegalSportsReport.com for all of these stories in depth with all the great stuff that Adam and company are doing over there as well. If you want to follow Adam on the Twitter machine, @AdamCandee, 2 E's, no Y. For Adam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.